Your dad was better at talking to women than you are, and I can prove it. This isn't about back in my day nostalgia. This is about skill development. Let me explain. I'm 31, my dad is 62, and when I really looked at how he approached dating versus how my generation does, I realized something that changed my entire perspective on social skills. My dad isn't naturally confident. He's actually pretty introverted, but by the time he was 20, he'd asked out probably 50 women. He'd been rejected dozens of times. He'd had hundreds of real conversations. I'm 31, and by the time I was 20, I'd maybe approached 5 women in real life. Most of my game was texting, messaging on Facebook, later swiping on Tinder, and I thought I was normal. Turns out I was part of the first generation to completely miss out on real-world social skill development. Let me break down what happened. Your dad grew up in a world where if he liked a girl, he had exactly one option: walk up and talk to her. There was no texting, no DMs, no sliding into DMs, no liking her Instagram stories to see if she notices. He had to approach, in person, with his voice, while making eye contact. And because that was the only option, he did it. A lot. Think about what that means for skill development. At 14, your dad was already talking to girls at school dances. Fumbling? Sure, but practicing. At 16, he was calling girls on their house phones, having to talk to their parents first, then actually holding a conversation. At 18, he was approaching women at parties, at work, at college. No warm-up through text, just straight into real conversation. By 25, he'd had literally thousands of real-time social interactions with women. Now think about your development. At 14, you were texting. Plenty of time to craft the perfect response. No real-time pressure. At 16, you were DMing on Instagram. Still no voice. Still no eye contact. Still no real-time social calibration. At 18, you were swiping on Tinder, matching based on photos, then texting, maybe a phone call if you were brave, then finally meeting up, which was your first real conversation with this person. By 25, you might have had 50 real-time conversations with women you were attracted to. Maybe. Your dad had 50 by the time he was 16. That's not a small gap. That's a decade of practice you never got. But here's what makes it even worse. It's not just about quantity of practice. It's about when you practiced. Your dad learned social skills during his peak neuroplasticity years, ages 12 to 18. That's when your brain is literally wired to learn social behavior, when you're most adaptable, most open to feedback, most able to recover from embarrassment. He learned how to read body language, voice tone, facial expressions. He learned how to banter, how to flirt, how to handle rejection, and he learned it when his brain was designed to absorb that information. You learned those skills, if you learned them at all, in your 20s. After your brain had already hardened, after social anxiety had time to calcify, after you'd spent years in text-based communication that never challenged you to develop real-time social processing. And now, you're trying to compete in a world where women expect basic conversation skills, and you're starting from scratch at 25 or 30. It's not your fault, but it is your problem. Technology changed the game. Dating apps told you that texting game was enough. Social media told you that building an attractive profile was the same as being attractive in person. And now you're realizing none of that taught you how to hold a conversation. But here's the good news. Your dad wasn't born knowing how to talk to women. He wasn't naturally charismatic. He just practiced. A lot. In a world that forced him to practice, which means the skill is learnable. You just need to make up for lost time. Think about it like this. If someone grew up playing basketball from age 10 and you started at age 25, you'd be behind. Obviously. But you could still get good. You just need deliberate, focused practice. More reps in less time. Same thing with conversation. You can't go back and get those teenage years where social skills develop naturally. But you can compress the learning curve. How? Deliberate practice in a safe environment. Your dad practiced on real women because that was the only option. And it worked, but it was also brutal. Lots of rejection, lots of embarrassment, lots of failed conversations. You don't have to do that. You can practice in private first. That's what I built Talk to Her for. It's basically the conversation equivalent of a batting cage. You practice with AI women who have different personalities and conversation styles. You get your reps in without the social risk. And look, I'm not saying AI practice replaces real conversation, but it gives you the fundamentals, the muscle memory, the confidence that comes from repetition. Then when you talk to real women, you're not starting from zero. You're starting from 100 practice conversations. So yes, your dad had it easier in some ways. He was forced to practice. The environment did the work for him. You're in a harder spot. You have to choose to practice. You have to deliberately seek out what he got by default. But you also have advantages he didn't. You can practice privately. You can compress years of learning into months. You can study what works instead of just guessing. Your dad stumbled through 1,000 conversations to figure out what you can learn in 100 deliberate practice sessions. The question is, are you going to use those advantages, or are you going to keep wishing you were born in 1960? Link in the description. First 3 conversations are free. You can catch up to where your dad was at 18. It'll just take intention instead of accident, or you can keep being jealous of previous generations while doing nothing about your own situation. That's also a choice. Let me know in the comments, do you think your dad actually had it easier, or am I off base here? I'm curious to hear from guys who grew up in different eras too.